Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Fast Keto. Now, this is a truly special episode. It is featuring Ella Bruce, who is someone that I absolutely admire and look up to. It's probably maybe my most favorite. I don't like to play favorites with the episodes, but one of my favorite episodes of Fast Keto ever, so much so that I had to break it into 3 parts, maybe even 4. And next week, Ella and I are going to do a live Ask Me Anything with her as a 4th parter to this. And we're going to do that over on Instagram. I will share a post announcing all the details on that. If you want to join and ask Ella questions live, you'll be able to do that. It's going to be next Friday or on Friday, one of the last Fridays in May, probably the last Friday in May. But today we talk all about body recomposition, and this is from someone who has totally achieved this in her own life. Ella has been doing a sort of ketogenic, low-carb, carnivorous approach, high-protein diet, and she has completely recomposed her body. She has also recovered significantly from disordered eating in her life through all of these mechanisms, through this protocol. And we talk a lot about that in the episode. So we get into a little bit of geeking out, but also made sure that we explain all the different biochemical pathways and topics to make them super easy to relate. And it's just a fantastic episode. There's not much more I can say about it other than you're going to have to tune in. I know you're going to learn so much from this episode because I absolutely did. And I would love to hear your feedback on it. So go over and share that over on Instagram. Tag us in a post or comments on this post about what your takeaways were, and be sure to join us on Friday, the last. So we're going to make that happen for you guys and do those on a regular basis as sort of a peer mentoring new project that we want to do together and collaborate on. So I'm really, really excited to share this part 1 of the episode with you guys today, and I'll be putting out part 2 because there is so much wonderful information and knowledge that Ella has, and I know that you guys, if you know her, you already love her, and if you don't, you are going to love her. So please enjoy this episode, part 1, with Ella Bruce. By this theoretical certainty that protein is not fuel ever. Only carbs and fat are energy, and protein are just the building blocks for our cells, for our enzymes, for our muscle tissue, for, our hormones.
And then you find out that's a lie.
I'm like, no, it's actually, then I interviewed Dr. Don Layman, and he's like literally 60 grams of glucose is produced from 100 grams of protein.
Well, yeah, I mean, Don knows this because I know I'm getting this information from Don, but that really depends on what amino acids they are.
Yes.
Essentially 60% of them are glucogenic, and the other 40% are ketogenic. Or they break down into short chain fatty acids, but it's such a complex thing, and this is where it really comes down to is that how much of what we're eating contributes to contributes its carbon chain to actually being used for energy. I actually don't know the answer, and I don't really think anyone does. I've heard everything from the process of actually using the amino acids themselves as a building block, quote unquote, means that they're no longer available to use for energy production. But then I've also seen other opinions and other bits of research contradicting that. It actually says in order to access the nitrogen building blocks as part of those amino acids, they actually have to cleave off the carbon chains that are on the front of them. And that means that even if you use protein for a building block, you still derive energy from it. And it's kind of like, whoa, sorry, and I guess I used to subscribe to the same idea.
Dr. Stu Phillips was saying this really interesting thing that he thinks that someone could get away potentially with higher protein, staying in ketogenesis, if they don't have this bolus of protein, and that it's the bolus of protein, say at a 1 meal a day approach or something, that then would kick someone out of ketogenesis. But that's fine. It's okay to depart from a state of ketogenesis, even if your goal is fat loss. Actually, it could be maybe better for you if you want to just build lean muscle, which I think people are really like, I know I am. I think a lot of people are starting to clue in, okay, it's body composition. It's not just a scale weight. It's what is my body?
We're so bad for that. We see that number and that's all we are.
Yes. It determines like our value and our worth, and it's the saddest thing ever. And I just think understanding like our body composition, what it actually is, how to improve that. I think, last time we podcasted, we just ended up pretty much hanging out and geeking out. I do have a bunch of questions.
I feel like this is going to happen again, but yeah.
The first question I want to ask you is, knowing all you do about training and diet, do you think that things are different for women? And this is a question that I've always denied in the past, because I was like, no, we're equal. Like, stop changing the message for women. Like, we're all friggin' the same. But I'm starting to realize that maybe that was arrogant and maybe things are different. So in your opinion, being as trained and like successful as you have been in training your body and gaining lean mass, do you think that there are things that are different for women and men? And what do you think those things are?
They certainly are. And so I think the training stimulus doesn't really change much between genders. I think there is, certain people might respond better to different training stimuluses based on muscle fiber distribution, as well as androgen receptor densities in certain muscle groups. So for example, males tend to have a lot of androgen receptors through like the delts and shoulders. So when they take steroids, they get the big neck. So like there is a component of like physiology and sex hormone receptor component of it. But the training stimulus itself, if it works for one person of a gender, it's going to be pretty damn effective for the other gender as well. I don't see any intersex-based preferences one or the other. So to be very plain in that language, I do not think that there is a need for a female to lift low weights, high reps, and a male to lift really heavy weight and low reps. That is complete bullshit. Being blunt about it.
Yeah.
All training stimuluses are equally good for genders based on goals. That said, we do have some pretty unique physiology in terms of how we recover, I think.
Okay.
What are the primary benefits of taking androgens, so steroids? Is that it increases your ability to recover from a training session. So you don't actually so much grow too much faster, but you can go through a much higher training stimulus more often, and that's what kind of produces the adaptive response. Don't get me wrong, people gain muscle just taking steroids anyway, but like from a trained athlete, it doesn't really do much apart from just increase your ability to be able to train more. As females having a lower androgen environment, generally speaking, our recovery ability is relatively depressed. We can't recover from the same training load in the same time, eating the same, relative intake as what a male could, and that's okay. And we also obviously have to deal with our cycle. And the biggest issue that I found with female athletes through with their cycle is, again, when you're moving in through to your actual cycle itself, your recovery ability is heavily depressed. And on top of that, even your exercise performance within that period is also is also quite heavily reduced. So I tend to find through that week, like, we need to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I suppose compassionate with ourselves in the fact that we just can't perform to where we might have, only the week previously. And, if you're someone like me who meticulously tracks progress, which, by the way, if you're not, you should, it can eat away at you as an athlete, seeing that performance dip down, suddenly one week. But if you record that over enough period of time, you notice you always have that dip in that fourth week every time. and it is just part of that cycle. So in terms of useful advice, I suppose there's two parts. The first is that I recommend people be aware that it's there, be a little bit more compassionate towards themselves, and not expect that, you know, they're going to be able to perform where they could when they weren't on their cycle. That's not an excuse to just like sit at home and eat chocolates like, oh, well, I'll pick it up next week. I'm just like, don't let it drag you down, if that makes sense. The way I tend to try and cope with it is that through that period, I'll purposely reduce my volume, but I'll try and maintain my intensity as high as possible. So if I was lifting, I don't know, deadlifting 120 or 140 kilos, for example, for say 10 reps, I might only be able to do 6 or 7, and that's okay. Like I'd shoot for that. Or alternatively, if I was coming up for a deload, I'd try and synchronize my deload week with the week that I'd be cycling. So that way, like, I'd naturally have a lower intensity, a lower volume phase, just in that period where I couldn't quite recover as much. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's really, really interesting. And women have totally different hormones. I mean, I know I've seen with myself and other, say, like carnivore women in the space or keto women, the week before a cycle, we're all craving fish. Like everyone's like breaking out the tuna, sashimi, and it's like consistently over and over again, we're all noticing these things. It's like during that week, that's like all I want. You know, so there's like, and the more you tune into your body and you listen to what your body's asking for, instead of psychologically deciding, well, this is what I'm going to eat that day. Like, what does my body actually want? I mean, I don't think men experience that. I doubt they have like fish cravings at a certain, I mean, men have more daily cycles as opposed to our like monthly ones, but I think it is important to understand there are hormonal differences. Now, what would you say, I think probably the biggest interest point for women is like toning, maybe not necessarily like bulking, but is more toning. And that to me goes back to fat loss and also like increasing muscle. But like I've been able to tone more personally just with diet than I ever did in the gym, like when I was working out all the time. But I think that you get to a certain point where like, okay, well, maybe now I want to add in like the training and all this stuff. So what would you recommend to like a newbie who's like kind of starting from scratch, wants to tone? Like maybe a lot of women have like loose skin from weight loss, like they've lost like 100 pounds and they have all this extra skin, or like, you know, there's different aspects of toning. Like what do you think is like the best approach?
So I'm going to get on my high horse in a second here, but before I do, I'm going to ask this. What is the difference between toning and bulking?
Well, toning, I guess, is like less appearance of body fat, like more tone, more like firm, like muscle tone that you can see, whereas bulking would be like more like larger size muscles.
First up, ladies, please get rid of toning out of your vocabulary, because it doesn't mean anything, and it's used in such a way to either make you feel inadequate because you're not toned enough, or it makes you feel inadequate because you've got too much muscle and you're no longer feminine. So just pluck that word right off, okay? When people say tone, what they're really meaning, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is that what in the bodybuilding world we would call recomping, you know, going through a recomposition phase, you know, where you're simultaneously gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time. You know, what you're really seeking for is, you're not trying to get super shredded, in which case you know have no fat on you and you do a cut phase, and you're not trying to bulk where you just want to be physically larger as a human being, taking up extra room.
Yes.
You know, what you want is you want progressive progress and looking better and better and better every month. You know, like that's what I hear when someone says that they want to tone. Mm-hmm. You know, so recomp.
Maybe more firmness is the right word, like more firmness, less like a lot of women jiggle, or more firmness, if that makes sense.
So firmness is ultimately a value of how much fat you've got covering your muscles. So I suppose if you are at a point now where you're like, you know what, I'd like to be more toned, you're really in one of three locations on a spectrum. And I'll break them down each for you. You're either, what I would say is, say you're overweight and you want to try and get more toned. You could tell that you might fall into this category if you don't already obviously just know, like, you want to lose weight. You would have very soft kind of features, you know, things in themselves feel very blurry, like you don't have like a hard collarbone, or you don't have like you can't see like the top of that iliac, or not the iliac, sorry, the clavicle. And just those little things where like the details themselves are a little bit hidden. That would be the kind of phase where you're like, okay, I would look better, I'd look more toned if people were able to see more of a shape underneath me. In which case, your best bet to get more toned in that case would be to try and do a weight loss or fat loss, not weight loss, fat loss specific phase. You know, that might go for anywhere from 6 to 18 weeks, depending on where you are. You might be someone
through nutrition.
Correct. Yeah. And keep in mind, all three of these people, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to be more toned, that means you're lifting heavy weights. That's not, you know, really lightweight for higher reps, because that's cardio with weights, and that has a whole different purpose. If you want shape, you need to make your body want to build a shape underneath it. The second category I would say is, very unfortunately, it's kind of like nicknamed skinny fat. You know, it's where like you look skinny in clothes, but when you take it off, like everything is just very, again, blurry, undefined, like you don't really have too much shape, you're just there. Yeah. And it sounds so terrible to say, but you know, if you feel like that's you, then I'd recommend a recon. So that would be where you have a bit more of a protein heavier approach, just to make sure that you are in that, you know, that protein surplus. But I'd try and eat at around maintenance to maybe up to 300 to 500 calories below maintenance. So you should either be kind of maintaining your weight or very slowly, you know, losing weight over time, whilst noting that your strength, and I say strength specifically, but your strength is increasing at the same time. And if you find that you can't gain strength with the amount of food that you're eating, then you need to either choose at that point whether or not you want to go into a weight loss phase and really just focus on getting rid of those last couple of kilos, or maybe you want to increase food a little bit and you want to increase your muscle growth a little bit. You know, so like that, there is that bit of a balancing act, but you're in that point where you want to try and do both at the same time. You know, that's a very sustainable approach. Finally, you might be the kind of person who has just either just had a huge weight loss journey and, you know, you've been really successful, but you've gotten down, you've realized that having lost 100 pounds, you're really just a smaller version of what you were before. Like you don't have that dream body that you really wanted, or maybe you're naturally very skinny, but you're very boxy. You don't have like a lot of shape that goes through, you know, like from the edge of your shoulders just drops straight down. You don't have like that like really, really cute little shoulder pop that comes up, or you don't, you know, you want to try and build up a little bit more time, like shape. In which case you would probably be better off doing more of a gain phase. I won't say bulk, because bulk implies gaining physical size, and that's not what we want for you. For you, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to eat for performance, right? You want to try and perform as hard and as highly as you can in the gym, create as much of a stimulus to try and create that little bit of extra shape underneath you, and you're just eating enough food to support that. You know, some days that might mean that you're eating a little bit more than maintenance to try and help gain a little bit of weight. But for the most part, like that'll just kind of be, you know, intuitive eating. And if you're finding that, you know, you need to eat a little bit more to perform, then you do that. And if you're gaining fat and you don't really want to, just dial it back a little bit. I know I make that sound very, very easy, but it is easy. It's just hard when you're in the moment and you're dealing with the problem yourself.
I think that those are great. You outlined like the cases that probably most people would find themselves in, one or the other, especially in our community with people like on weight loss journeys. And and things. And I think we're lucky if you did lose weight with higher protein and fat as opposed to, you know, high carb, your body composition is probably like better for it. Like I know I gained 8 pounds of lean mass and lost almost 20% body fat. And when I was high carb, like it was all I was doing was adding more body fat. So like, I think that if you're in the low carb space, you're probably somewhat better off, like body composition wise. Now, do you think that women can do that, like say with working out like at home, or do they need to go to a gym? Do they need to, like, I think gyms are really intimidating for a lot of people. So I'm always like, hey, if you can work out at home, put on a YouTube video, do body weight exercises, because gyms are just intimidating in general for people. Like they're full of mirrors. It can be a house of horrors. Like if you don't like what you see,
areas full of stinky boys. Like
yeah. So if you can do it at home and it's easy, but is that enough? Like, do people really need to go to a gym, like potentially work with a trainer to get postures right and lift heavy weights? Or can they do it just with like calisthenics and doing like push-ups and squats and things?
So, I mean, my experience is in the gym, you know, as a bodybuilder. That's kind of like my bread and butter, to the point where I'm not even really sure how to do a home workout. Like I really don't know. But it sounds terrible.
Like if someone's at home doing push-ups, squats, lunges, crunches.
Look at people like Jerry Trexera. You know, I don't know. Sorry, Jerry, if I've said it wrong, but you know, look at him. He's amazing. He's a fun-ass human being. And let me tell you, he doesn't go to the gym. Like he does all of his calisthenic workouts at home, and like he's got a lot of muscle hypertrophy that's gone through. You know, and a lot of it is because he's got great nutrition, but at the same time, like he's doing, you know, resistance training at home. So you can achieve outstanding bodies just using your own body weight resistance. Ted Naiman has got it, had that result as well. You know, you look at gymnasts and they almost exclusively work with their own body weight. So it's definitely possible. You know, and I have nothing but respect for those people who are, you know, democratize fitness. I think that's again a Tedism, that phrase he likes to use. You know, and teaching people how to do the prison workouts at home. That said, if you'll accept my sale pitch here, ladies, fuck the boys in the gym. Get in there. Like, this is your space too. And, you know, I actually remember like what it was like when I first started being really scared going through, and, you know, I'm just going to sit on the cardio machine because this is really intimidating. And then it was just like the pin loaded machines. And then like you kind of, you go on a bit of a journey for it until eventually, like I've got memory. This is a bit of a humble brag, I'm sorry. But, you know, I've got memories of like seeing a guy in the free weights area doing terrible form bicep curls with like 12 or 14 kilo dumbbells. And I've come across with the 20s and I'm doing strict form. You know what I mean? Like that felt really good. You know what I mean? Just to be able to, you know, dominate a little bit of a space, you know, like mark it out. Like there's no reason that I should be scared of it. I know it's very easy to say I've gone on that journey, but if I could recommend anything, like it's so empowering to be able to just strut it out and own that part of the gym if you can bring yourself to it.
Yeah.
And those mirrors, they're not going to be your enemy forever. You know,
Right.
I was obese once. I know you've gone on that same journey.
Yeah.
One day they can be a friend.
Yes, absolutely. They can, I mean, help you with form and everything. Like I use our mirrors in the hallway, you know, to make sure I have good form and everything. Because it helps a lot. But I think that just goes, it's part of the discussion of like women taking up space and like being told to not take up space and like be tiny and small, and like having that confidence to like own the space and take it up and like get in there, you know, even if guys are in there. I know having a trainer helped me to do that because it gave me more confidence to be able to go in there. And like, you just don't want to be in the gym thinking like, getting in your head and being like, I know I'm doing it wrong and I must look dumb. And like, you guys are probably looking at me thinking, you know, can help
We've
to.
all seen those horror videos of someone just doing like the stupidest thing in the gym. You're like, oh my God, is that going to be me? Like, so I get it. I really do.
Yeah,
but
it's easier to stick to the stair machine.
Fuck that thing. I hate that thing. It hurts so bad. Anyway.
Yes, it does. Now, do you think that, like, what kind of training routine do you think is optimal? Do you think that cardio should like play a role at all, or like should the main focus just be like weight bearing resistance exercise and like high intensity kind of thing? Like, what's been your approach?
Yeah. Okay. So my thinking on this is kind of evolved a little bit recently. So I'll give you what I've done to get to where I am. Just out of being honest, and then I suppose I'll talk about, you know, how my thoughts on everything has kind of like changed over time. So I've almost exclusively been a strength athlete for as long as I can remember, even, you know, going through and doing bodybuilding, you know, where everyone else was always, you know, really, you know, they would change their rep range into like the 12, 15 rep. I've almost always worked, you know, between like the 5 to 8 at a max. You know, I really enjoy lifting heavy. I really enjoy the process of going through that. You know, it's not even egotistical. It's just the whole psych up to getting into a lift, to go sit there and know that like that particular lift is like right on the edge of what you can physically do, to then, you know, pick it up and like it's more than what you could do, you know, a week or a month or 2 months ago. Like that high, I love that. It's so addicting. I wish everyone else could, you know, experience that. So I've always been very strength-based heavy. So that's kind of been the foundation for my physique. I think one of the side effects of doing that is that, you know, when you train like a powerlifter, you look like a powerlifter to a degree. The only difference is that I wasn't eating like a powerlifter, you know, and some of the side effects that occurred for me was, you know, I thickened out through my waist from doing like a lot of rotational work, or I thickened out through my waist from deadlifts. And, you know, there have been periods in my life where I felt, you know, less good, if that's even a phrase, about myself, or insecure about how thick my waist has become. But that it's a trade-off. Like, you know, I've asked my body to be able to do something that is right on the edge of what's realistically, naturally and physically possible for someone my weight and size, you know, and it responds in a way to be able to do that. And, you know, one of the side effects is that, you know, my abs they grew just like every other part of the muscle to be able to support it. So, you know, I only mention that just because I think it would be disingenuous of me not to mention, you know, all the great things that have happened, but also maybe some of the things that I didn't quite enjoy as much. So that's that got dark really quickly. So that was the approach that I've taken. I've had a lot of success from a powerlifting style. To answer your question about you know, glycolytic versus oxidative exercise, I think the majority. Okay, if your main goal is physique enhancements, you just want to look good naked, then the majority of your exercise needs to be predominantly glycolytic. You know, you want to try and deplete muscle glycogen, liver as much as possible. So that way you're creating an adaptive response that your body then has to try and replace. It means that, you know, if you're burning muscle glycogen, you know, if you have a big protein bolus and it does turn into 60% glucose, thank you very much, Don Lehman, you know, your muscles are ready to soak that up. Like, you have that glucose disposal ability. You know, I think that's so foundational. Like, you just need to have that ability because it gives you so much more flexibility in your eating.
Just for listeners, could you clarify glucose disposal?
Oh, so sorry, your ability for you to take glucose out of your blood and move it into an energy storage system, whether that is muscle glycogen, liver glycogen, to be oxidized in a cell, like just how quickly you can clear blood glucose.
Right, because we have different storage compartments on the body. We store glucose in the form of glycogen, like long chains of glucose in the liver, and the muscles predominantly?
Yeah. So we store about 300 in total across your muscles. You can store up to about 100 in your liver. Yes. And your blood can hold about 4 grams in total. Each day, we make about 100 to about 120 grams of glucose. However, every gram of glucose that we eat up until the first 120 actually reduces that amount. So if you need 120 grams, that's actually called obligatory glucose disposal. Obligatory glucose utilization or production. If you don't have any, your body will make that much, or you can just eat it.
Right, because your brain and heart, some organs have this obligatory glucose demand that they need to be fueled primarily by glucose.
Right. Then I'm not saying that, glucose in that instance is essential. It's not. I'm just saying that you either make it or you eat it. Like, it doesn't matter. But either way, you're having 120 grams of it come through your blood each day.
Right.
But anyway, so your ability to be able to dispose of glucose, when you do have like a little bit of a treat, or like you have a huge protein bolus, or you have something like that, it's just so beneficial to quality of life in general. So many of the benefits that people try to ascertain from a ketogenic diet can actually be replicated just by having an intense training program. And when you have both of them together, it's even better. On Twitter just recently, I shared an anecdote where I did some exercise, and then about 20 minutes afterwards, I had a piece of banana bread. So it's altogether is about 60 grams of glucose. And then out of interest, like an hour later, I decided to check my blood glucose, and I came back at 3.2, which is actually hypoglycemic. So I had low blood sugar. And like for a lot of people that would blow their mind, they're like, wait, so you just ate nothing but refined sugar and carbohydrates and you had low blood sugar? But when your body has the ability to just absorb it because you're burning it and you've got like that storage ability, little things like that, it's not even a blip on the radar. Like, it just doesn't affect you anymore. And I think people who, don't do everything they can to try and take advantage of that are really missing out on the quality of life improvement that comes from it. And that's not even talking about the benefits that come from, life extension by having more muscle mass, avoiding sarcopenia, the quality of life that you'll have if you're more capable, more able, more physical as you age.
Yes.
The other component you spoke before about, cardiovascular or, oxidative exercise. And, that's actually been something for a very long time, part of my life, I've actually eschewed. And that was based on a lot of like bodybuilding dogma, that cardio kills gains and it's going to make you, and honestly, I've kind of come to the realization that it's very untrue. In reality, what happens is that when you're in a fat adapted state and your body is predominantly burning fatty acids for its main energy source, whether that's because you're eating a high fat diet or you're in a high energy deficit, it doesn't really matter. You become very good at oxidizing fat for energy, right? Well, when you do a lot of cardiovascular exercise, what you're actually training your body to do is to be able to work at a higher capacity, but burn less glucose to do it, right? So you're lowering your oxidative threshold. So, for example, when you're very unfit, you go for a small run, you're huffing and puffing because your body needs a lot of oxygen to do that much work. You're burning a lot of energy, both from glucose and from fat, trying to get that done. But as you get fitter and fitter and fitter, your body gets more efficient and better at using fatty acids for energy, and therefore it doesn't need to expire as much carbon dioxide, so you don't need to breathe as much because you're not burning glucose, you're burning fat. So, what I'm coming to really appreciate is the role that cardiovascular fitness plays in, increasing your fatty acid oxidation rates, even at rest. And I can see a lot of, I hate this phrase, but I can see a lot of synergy, I think, in optimizing, how we metabolize fat by having, a high glycolytic training load, by keeping glucose into only, meeting exercise requirements or your physiological requirements, not overeating it in a high carb diet, doing cardiovascular exercise to train your body to be able to burn fat at higher and higher and higher intensities. So that way it's more and more its preferred energy substrate, I'm starting to appreciate that it's a very holistic approach, and that, overly specializing in any one fitness modality, I think, is probably a mistake long term.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. You always give such well thought out, constructed answers, from the top down. And I think it's really, really helpful. And, aerobic exercise at 60 to 70% of your VO2 max is just a fat burning, straight fat burning. That's your main substrate, right? So I think it probably has a role and can be beneficial. I like to recommend it if it's something enjoyable, like if you love hiking, if you love biking, like I love biking so much, stand-up paddleboarding, like that's not so much cardio, but if there are cardio activities like tennis or something that you like, then it's going to be a positive. It's just I think what we both eschew is that, like, that treadmill flat, like running for an hour or two a day, trying to compensate or something. And it's not enjoyable. It's not fun. Whereas like you could do things outdoors, or maybe that you enjoy activities that are fun, as opposed to just being in the gym. Like, I'm trying to burn off like all this
go
stuff.
kick the ball around like a kid, or like, do whatever. But actually coming back around to the cardiovascular thing, I've been doing a lot of research over the last, probably 9 to 12 months into what's essentially called energy flux. The idea of I love this topic. It's like, it fascinates me. Right. So, okay, cool. So, like, it's I suppose a hypothetical for the listeners, which would be better for body composition, right? Someone who's eating a 500 calorie a day deficit, eating only 1,500 calories. So, small diet, but has a 500 calorie deficit, or someone who does a lot more activity and has a 500 calorie deficit, but is eating 2,500 or 3,000 calories. Which one's going to be better for body composition? And, like on the base level, I think most people are like, oh, they'll be the same, like calorie in, calorie out, all of that jazz. But the truth is it's not even close to being the same. Whilst the total change in weight is similar across groups, where that weight actually comes from is very, very different. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I just see you taking note.
Yeah, because I have a few things I want to make sure that we touch on, but also reminders to explain things, to listeners, because I'm getting a lot of feedback that sometimes the discussions, if someone hasn't studied biochemistry, are just not accessible. So I'm like, well, we need to explain fat flux. Sorry?
Let me know. Maybe if it's one of those things, I'll bring it down.
You and I could geek out, and like so many people could listen to that. But if people will benefit the most from like understanding like what is like a fat flux, if we're going to talk about it, that's why I'm making notes.
Yeah. So coming back through to energy flux, as it actually turns out that the energy deficit per day controls the change in mass. So that means that if you're eating the same calorie deficit, eating a little bit of food or eating a lot of food, right, the total weight that you lose will be the same, but the effect on your body will be very, very different. Generally speaking, I strongly recommend that people try and increase their calorie deficit, at least in the medium term, by actually increasing their expenditure. And I'm not meaning go away and do like 3 million hours of cardio a week. I just mean to say that, if you could lose weight eating 1,500 calories, or you could lose weight eating the same amount of, you could lose the same amount of weight, but eating, an extra meal or an extra 2 meals per day, like that is always going to be more beneficial, because like that's more opportunity for you to get sufficient protein, to get sufficient micronutrients, to better meet your body's metabolic needs. But even more than that, there is really there's a lot of different mechanisms, but there are, two major, I suppose, levers, I think, that control change in body composition for any given diet. I'd say that it's protein percentage. So, all things being equal, if you go higher, you're going to lose a greater proportion of the weight loss will be coming from fat versus from lean body mass. And activity. The more active you are, the greater the signal that you're telling your body that I need you to retain this muscle mass because I'm using it, the more likely you are to retain it. I think we get so caught up in the nutritional component, we don't really see that it is such a holistic thing. It's health and fitness. It's not just the health, and fitness feeds into it, and health feeds back into fitness again. And to not make it sound like I'm rambling, I suppose my advice to people is that if you're presented with an opportunity to do more activity within a period of time and eat more food and achieve the same results, you absolutely should be taking that. Right. Again, I'm not trying to encourage you to become a neurotic cardio bunny. I'm trying to encourage you to, be active every day, do something every day. Because we look at the research in terms of long-term adherence to weight loss. What we actually find is that there is a much stronger correlation to someone's daily physical activity. And again, I'm not referring specifically to exercise, to long-term success than there is even with protein. Your daily activity is a better predictor for you maintaining a healthy weight long-term than what diet you eat. And yet we focus almost predominantly on the dietary component. When getting out and kicking the ball with your children is such an easy little win to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too that people in our space can get fixated so much on time restricted eating and like one meal a day. And there's actually research showing, I was talking to Dr. Don Layman about this, how the thermic effect that, somewhere around 30% loss of calories from protein intake can actually, in his studies, they found the lowest fat mass on people who were eating more frequently during the day, that you would get this thermic effect times 3 if you eat 3 times a day, and as opposed to eating once a day with a bolus. And I think that's probably, where a lot of the eat 6 meals a day kind of thing, like maybe that idea comes from, that construct comes from. But then if you start to do just like 1 meal a day and that works for you, great. But you could maybe be missing out on the benefits of having a greater thermic effect from, like, whether it's protein or carbs, during the day, more frequently.
I think the biggest thing with this. Oh, no, please go.
Yeah, the one, and I think also speaking again to women, not that men don't have hormones, like men and women both obviously have hormones, but that I think there may be, like you were saying, eating more times per day could be beneficial for optimal hormonal function. It's like you're more likely going to get enough protein to trigger muscle protein synthesis. You're more likely to get enough maybe essential fats. I know the demand for that is really small, but that could be more beneficial potentially.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And like I've seen, female clients who were amenorrheic, so they didn't have their period, at a particular calorie deficit. And, a lot of the common advice when people they've lost their period, do less exercise, sleep more, eat more food, and they all work, that's good advice. But I've also seen people who were, in that state, and all they did was increase the amount of food they eat and then just did a little bit of extra exercise to compensate, and they got their period back. And I think from an evolutionary perspective, that makes a lot of sense. Like we lose our sex drive when we're starved. We don't want to reproduce if there's, a food shortage. Males get issues with erectile dysfunction, females lose their period. Like it's just, I think it's a human response to low food availability, you know. And so I suppose when you think about it within that context, it makes a lot of sense that when people increase their food availability but still maybe have an energy deficit, you know, they get their period back. You know, they're still making progress of what they were previously, but now all of a sudden their hormonal level is rebalanced back out again, and they've regained their period.
There's two things I really want to hit on that I've heard you talk about before that I would love to hear you break it down like I'm a 4-year-old. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this part of the episode with Ella. It was such a blast to chat with her. I hope that some of your questions were answered. She has so much amazing expertise when it comes to body recomposition, and love getting to have her on the show with us. It's truly a privilege. And to get to do live videos with her, the Ask Me Anything episodes that we do are over on Instagram. If you want to join us live, you can join over there and check out my feed on Instagram to see when we do those together, the Ask Me Anything episodes, where you can ask any question that you have about body recomposition from an expert who truly has done and mastered body recomposition herself. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode today with Ella. Now, if you want to try out doing keto with me as your coach and guide, you can head over to ketogenicgirl.com, see all of the meal plan programs that I have there, which are modeled after how I personally eat, how I got my body composition down from close to 40% down to 21%. And I'm here to be your guide and help coach you with any questions that you have as we go along in our members Facebook group. So any of the meal plans that are at ketogenicgirl.com also come with my coaching and guidance and support in our members group. And you can head over to Ketogenic Girl to check those out, or send me a message over on Instagram. Send me a DM with your goals about which meal plan would be best for you. And I would absolutely love to have you in the program. Would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's episode, send it to someone that you think would enjoy it too. Leave me a rating, a review, and subscribe so you get notifications when I put out new episodes. So until the next episode, wishing you a fat-fueled rest of your day. Bye for now.